So, I'm in a little bit of an odd position right now. I am often accused of being a shitlib for not joining in the cacophony of condemnations that AOC, Bernie Sanders, other left leaning Democratic politicians catch from some parts of the left. And to be honest with you guys, I'm not really the biggest defender of AOC or Ilhan Omar or whatever else. I just think that a lot of the hate they get from the left is kind of dumb. Like, a ton of it comes from this, like, oh, you wouldn't force the vote type stuff. And just like, I don't care that much, but you have to have good criticisms. And sometimes, like, they're so dumb, it just feels like it, it feels like they just like attacking these people. It's something that the left has always had a problem with, you know? When people on the right get powerful, all the right-leaning people jerk off and come. When people on the left get powerful, all the lefties prove they're leftier than thou by canceling the lefties that are in power. It's a really, really, really bad system for propagating, political power. But yeah, I'm not defending this one. Basically, Congress was voting on providing 1 billion for the Iron Dome, which, in addition to being the name of what your mom gives me every night, is also an Israeli super high-tech anti-missile interception defense system. Now, 1 billion for this system is a huge amount of money, and I know people forget this from time to time, but Israel is literally not the United States. It's literally not. Wait, why are we funding their shit? I don't know. Anyway, the long story short is this. Basically, can we isolate the factors here? Basically, AOC voted no, along with like fucking 10 people. Everyone voted yes. Look at this final vote, 418 to 10. Jesus Christ, Anyway, AOC voted no, but she voted present. Will you hold on? My God. Anyway, though we don't have the audio from this conversation, AOC had a heated discussion with Pelosi, after which it seems AOC changed her vote to present as opposed to no. Later, she was shown crying, 420 to 10. That's the one nay vote. After this, she switched it to a present. What does present mean? Present is, if I recall correctly, what Tulsi Gabbard voted on impeachment of Donald Trump. It means, I'm not going to vote. Yeah, I'm not going to vote. No, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's essentially the coward's no. Which is what I said about Tulsi Gabbard, and I'm going to say it about AOC as well. So the basic timeline of facts seems to be that AOC was publicly against this, and she voted against it, and then she talked with Pelosi, and then she changed her vote to present, and then she cried. Can we get the AOC crying image up here so we can really appreciate the full range of, yeah, there we go. Here we go. Now we're doing politics. Having herself a bit of a sob. So I'm going to address, I think, the stupid elements of this first, and then we'll tear into AOC. Okay? First of all, people making fun of her for crying honestly just kind of feel like it's a little rooted in sexism. AOC cries from time to time. I don't know. Broads, am I right? I don't know. I don't know. It just feels like a little weird to me. Like what? Like I don't know. Yes, just seems a little weird to me. I don't know. Little Squad W. Not liking that one. Additionally, there are people who are acting like she betrayed the Palestinian people, or that she devoted to fund genocide. I mean, of course, there are people who are taking these criticisms just beyond the gate. I invite you once more to please take a look at the yay versus the nay votes. AOC's position on this was utterly inconsequential in terms of the actual outcome. They're like, it's just utterly fucking inconsequential. And in terms of the people you should be angry at, I would always prefer you be angry at the people who voted, yay, all the Democrats who did that, as opposed to, I mean, in terms of like the ascending order of like harm done here, like, oh my God, wow, support for Israel's behavior sure is bipartisan. There are people who have said that this isn't bad because the Iron Dome is like a defensible system, because it's purely a defensive system, and I don't agree with that. First of all, the U.S. should not be paying for Israel's expensive military hardware. That's one. Second of all, if you are willing to spend money to support the defensive military capacity of another country, you're implicitly enabling its offensive capacity. Or, in other words, I don't see the U.S. funding Palestinian defense forces. If you're supplying them money for their defense, you're still bolstering their military. You're still favoring people in the position of a conflict. If you really cared about preventing civilian casualties, you would support the Palestinians because they suffer far more casualties. But whatever. Let's focus on AOC here. So none of this to me strikes of like grifting or explicitly bad behavior. Yet, why did AOC change her vote? Why did a conversation with Pelosi change her vote? So there are some people saying she got bullied or kowtowed into it. My guess is this. New York is up for redistricting, right? I think there are Democrats who are concerned about the possibility of an additional Republican district in New York, and they wanted to reduce the possibility of that happening by not giving them any bait to hold on to, especially because there were a lot of Jewish people in New York, which means that they could vote this way and that way. Yeah. And while most Jews in America vote Democrat, most Jews in America, I'm pretty sure, at least to some extent, support Israel as well, though not as fanatically as like your average politician. So I have problems with this. First of all, that's cowardly. Backing off your principles uh, for shoddy behind the scenes political gain like that, I don't like that. That's not just being like strategic. That strikes to me as like starting to fall into the patterns of the larger machine. Not a big fan of that. Additionally, with regards to the practicality of this instance, like, you really think that's gonna like work? I mean, think about it. Do you think there are like Jewish people in New York who would have like voted red if AOC had voted no on the funding for the Iron Dome, but would now not vote red because she voted present? Uh, Maybe a few? I don't even know. I feel like anybody who would attack AOC for voting no would also attack her for voting present, right? Because we attacked Tulsi for voting present on the Donald Trump, you know, impeachment thing. So I don't know why. I don't even know how much easier it makes it a primary. That it just seems weird to me. It seems strange to me. It seems strange. It seems like incredibly minimal marginal gain, ambiguous motives, and altogether just like a weird situation. Now, everything that I've said so far, none of this would even like warrant my criticism beyond like kind of a shrug and a disapproving sneer. But something happened that does make me really unhappy. And it's what AOC said afterwards. Now, you're going to have to pardon me and give me a sec to put on my reading glasses, but imagine you're AOC's campaign team, or AOC herself, and imagine you've just come off the House floor, you've cast your vote, and you know what they're saying on social media. You know what they're saying. Went from no to present. I mean, come on. You know what they're saying. So you have to say something. You have to put out a statement to dissuade their anger. And what is the one thing that people are going to want to know, right? Why did you change your vote? Why did you change your vote to present? That's it. That's it, right? That's like the main thing people are going to want to know. Now, pardon me while I read this. And while I read this, I want you to ask yourself, is this answering that question? Yesterday, the House called to the floor a rushed $1 billion supplemental military funding bill for Israel's Iron Dome defense system. I want to be clear with our community that I am opposed to this bill, but ultimately cast a present vote. My job as your representative is to first and foremost serve with transparency and remain accountable to you, the people of New York's 14th. First, let me begin with why I believe this bill should have been opposed. Contrary to popular narrative, the bill was not for all U.S. funding of the Iron Dome, and opposing it would not defund U.S. financing of the system in any way, shape, or form. Since 2011, this goes on to explain why she would have voted no. This whole paragraph is her saying, no is the correct vote to make. So I'm just going to skip by it. You can read it if you like. Pause the video if we get to that. But this whole thing is basically, here's why you should vote no. Now let's continue with more reasons why she should vote no. In addition to opposing the substance of the Iron Dome supplemental bill, the process of bringing it to the House floor was deeply unjust. The legislative language itself was initially introduced earlier this week by way of an attempt to quietly slip this funding into routine legislation. Wow, this is pretty bad, huh? It goes on. It goes on. I want to make clear that the decision to rush this vote, virtually preventing any member from meaningfully consulting with their community, was both intentional and unnecessary. Still explaining why she should have voted no. I personally had a call with the House Majority Leader, you know who that is, to request a 24-hour stay of the vote so that we could do the work necessary to bring down the temperature and volatility, explain our positions, and engage our communities. That request was summarily dismissed. Not only was the request dismissed, but despite the House having almost 8 straight hours of votes yesterday, this vote was chosen to be the first, despite being one of the most controversial. So far, we have gotten no explanation at all for why she voted present. The damage of this careless process... I'm sorry, Speaker is a Majority Leader. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Please don't. My brain. Speaker isn't Majority Leader. I blame the sickness. I blame the brain fever. I blame the brain fever. Professional streamer, by the way. Can we move it along? Move it along. Yeah, get me out of here. Turn me into a game streamer. Turn me into a fucking game streamer. That's not misinfo. I technically didn't say anything wrong. I implied it. The damage of this careless process created a very real spillover effect into our community. It created a real sense of panic and horror among those in our community who otherwise thoughtfully engage in these discussions, and fueled the discussion to dissolve to a point where it became clear this vote would risk a severe devolution of the good faith community fabric that allows us to responsibly join in a struggle for human rights and dignity everywhere. Now, guys, real quick, what the fuck are they saying right here? The House rushing the bill created a spillover effect into the New York 14 community, causing a sense of panic and horror into our community who otherwise engage thoughtfully in these discussions and fueled the discussion to devolve to the point where it would become clear the vote would risk a severe devolution of the good faith community fabric that allows us to responsibly join in a struggle for human rights and dignity everywhere, from Palestine to the Bronx and Queens? First of all, that's a big old sentence. Second of all, tell me this doesn't read like her saying that the people who proposed the bill are the ones responsible for the dog shit that AOC is in right now. Does this not sound like that? AOC is like, well, because they threw that bill together so quickly that we had no choice but to fall apart, and all the hate that I'm getting right now is a product of the severe devolution of good faith community fabric. Does that not feel like blame shifting? It does, doesn't it? A little bit, in my opinion at least. She's saying that there was this great, infrastructure for discussing issues regarding Palestine and Israel and the Iron Dome, and that it was not her vote, but rather the way in which the bill was put forward that created the panic and the horror. Very hyperbolic words, by the way. Maybe that's how they're feeling over at AOC headquarters. I feel like it's more disappointment that people are feeling, you know? This to me strikes of shifting responsibility. She's talking to the 700K people in her district, not Twitter, but whatever. That's what she says she's talking to. But this got posted on Twitter, and she knows where it's going to get read, right? I mean, you can say I'm talking to NY14 all you want, but she's talking to everyone who's mad at her, you know? AOC's got a national stage. It's not just the limits of her one district. And this, to me, just strikes of shifting responsibility. And that is really goddamn weird to me. Yes, I wept. I wept at the complete lack of care for the human beings that are impacted by these decisions. I wept at an institution choosing a path of maximum volatility and minimum consideration for its own political convenience. And I wept at the complete lack of regard I often feel our party has to its most vulnerable and endangered members and communities, because the death threats and dangerous vitriol we'd inevitably receive by rushing such a sensitive, charged, and under-considered vote weren't worth delaying it for even a few hours to help us do the work necessary to open a conversation of understanding. Now again, read between the lines. She's not talking about open a conversation of understanding with Congress. She's saying with her community. This bill wasn't controversial for anyone but her community. Most people in America don't mind. That's why it was such an uncontroversial bill with how many people voted yes to it. So what is she saying here? I wept at an institution choosing a path of maximum volatility and minimum consideration for its own political convenience. Consideration for what? The blowback she would receive? I legitimately don't understand what this is, because if her intent was to actually criticize them for throwing this bill together so quickly, she wouldn't be talking about opening a space for discussion. She would be talking about opening up to the American people how unnecessary the bill is. Think about it. If her real criticism was that this was a rush job to prevent people from being able to talk about it or consider their options, the language here would be different. It wouldn't be about fear and terror being sown in our community. It would be about rushing it past the American people before they could weigh in. She's talking about covering her own ass here, not about meaningfully criticizing the behavior and the nature of this bill's passage. Do you understand what I mean? What are you talking about? Shit, how do I put this? AOC, or her crowd, whatever, are addressing the people who are mad at her right now. She's not just addressing her district, obviously. She's addressing everyone who follows her. And that's a national thing, okay? Now, people are angry at her right now. That's the reason why she put this out. It's why she opened this by saying she cast a present vote, and still hasn't explained why she cast a present vote. If her goal was to explain why she cast a present vote, she would have done so. If her goal was to talk about how this bill was rushed, she would have impugned it on the basis of it not having been given enough time to expose itself to American discourse. But she's not saying that. She's talking to her fans, addressing her upset fans as though their hurt wasn't a product of her voting present, but was a product of the bill being rushed through. Does that make sense? The language of this is off. There's no getting around the fact that she does not explain why she voted present. So you're saying there's no logical through line? I'm saying she probably voted present because Pelosi or other high-ups in the party felt it would be expedient for future districting results for her to do so. But rather than say that flatly, which would be kind of snakish, to just say that, like, oh, I changed my vote so you would vote Democrat in the next election. Rather than say that, this feels like... How do I put this? This feels like an abuse of the language of community organizing. It feels like there's a very specific vocabulary that we've developed for people like AOC who are half politician and half activist, where they have to toe the line between specific strategic political maneuvering and idealistic advocacy for certain positions. And this feels like an abuse of that language by invoking community organizing terminology to defend what was essentially a purely strategic political move. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? You know? Do you agree the political move was reasonable at least? I have no way of knowing without more information from behind the scene, but at a baseline, no. I don't know if it would do anything good. I don't know. So are you saying her community doesn't think this? What? I don't know what you mean by think this. I just think this is a guys, there are people, guys, if you're defending AOC, you need to be able to answer why she's not explaining why she voted present. Like, we can read the final paragraph. It certainly wasn't the first time people's well-being was tossed aside for political convenience, and sadly, I do not believe it'll be the last. To those I have disappointed, I'm deeply sorry. To those who believe this reasoning is insufficient or cowardice, I understand. To those who ask me to quell the volatility of this movement in our community, which constituted the majority of constituent feedback our office received, I hope we can take this moment an opportunity to more deeply engage in and grow a true substantive movement of community support for human rights around the world, which includes cherishing and respecting the human rights of Palestinian people. This is meaningless. She never explained why she voted present. Maybe you should have said what she should have done. I already said that. Either vote no, or if you're forced into voting present, be more explicit with that. But she can't, Vosh. She can't spill the tea for fear of retribution. Oh, guys. I am pretty permissive of this stuff, but you cannot allow your reflexive defense of AOC to reach the point where she can change her vote to a position she doesn't believe in for nebulous reasons while seeming that she's kowtowing to party pressure, and then put out a letter where she doesn't explain why, and then blames everyone but herself for her changing her vote, and then ends it with saying, I hope this reasoning is sufficient, when she didn't provide any reasoning at all at any point in this. The reasoning she provided is reasoning in favor of voting no. And then she's like, well, I hope my reasoning was sufficient. Yeah, for a no vote. Annie, I'm sorry. I don't agree. Politicians are voted in because we have an understanding of what it is they believe in. Changing the vote on this. Do you really think she listened to her constituents when she only changed her vote after talking with Pelosi? She listened to party leadership. You do understand it was likely her PR that drafted most of this, right? Even if she wanted to be honest, she couldn't, then that's on her. Her team and the messages they put out on her behalf are a part of her broader political weight and can be criticized to its totality. Why did they need a present vote, Vosh? What's the difference in the end? Oh, man. You're not getting me to go full Jimmy Dore. You're not going to get me to do it. I still like AOC. I think this is disappointing. You're not going to get me to go full Jimmy Dore on this shit, okay? You're not making me do it. You can't make me. Yeah, sorry, no. This What's the point of voting present instead of no or yes? Pay attention at the beginning. The point of voting present would be to assuage any people who would be more angry if she voted no. I would rather you criticize Pelosi more frankly. Okay. Let's think on this. My opinion on Pelosi is pretty well known. This might be the first time I've actually meaningfully criticized AOC in the entirety of this channel. You guys really going to attack me as though I'm like, no, you're not attacking me. Don't act like I'm coming after AOC like it's some sort of habit or propensity that I have. I am generally quite charitable. There are elements of this that I just do not think are acceptable. Chat is dumb, but the focus on AOC is dumb too. I said that as well, yes. However, this is definitely a negative mark against her. I'm just... Didn't we rightfully criticize Tulsi for voting President Trump's impeachment? Yes. Yes, we did. She changed her vote because she had pressure from the Jewish community. Did she talk with the Jewish community in between voting no and present, or did she talk with Pelosi? Or are you suggesting that Pelosi knows more about New York 14 than AOC does? Look, there are charitable and uncharitable ways of interpreting all of this information. You think this could be AOC just making a big panicked mistake? Here's what I think happened, okay? I think that AOC deals with more shit from all sides than virtually any other person in the country. There are very few people, Biden, maybe Pelosi, whatever, who get more shit from all sides. Maybe not even Pelosi. I don't know. AOC gets a lot, constantly. What about me? Well, of course I get more, VDS and all that. But besides me, I'm leaving myself out to keep the competition fair. AOC gets a lot of shit, and I imagine that wears on her. Now, that would wear on anyone. I imagine that wears on AOC. And I think what happened was this. She voted her conscience, which was no. Pelosi made an argument to her. Now, the extent to which that argument was coercive, I cannot possibly speculate. It could have been as simple as, hey, don't you think it would be politically expedient for you to actually vote present or yes? Or it could have been, we will oppose you till our dying day if you don't do X. I have no way of knowing. It's ultimately irrelevant without any more information to build off of. And AOC changed her vote. That on its own is not enough to make me angry. What makes me angry is the dishonesty in this letter. If you aren't going to explain why you cast a present vote, do not put out a fucking letter. Okay? You say that you wanted time for the bill so that you could have a conversation with New York 14. Well, then why not have a conversation with them afterwards? How about that, huh? Because you've got from now to your dying day. Why not now explain your thoughts on the issue? You did, except the thoughts you explained on the issue all point towards a no vote. That's the thing that bugs me. If she came out here and she was like, well, I'm more ambivalent than I initially thought I was thanks to X or Y, then okay, this all defends a no vote. So why is she coming out here saying, I voted present, here's why I should have voted no, and if this makes you mad, bye-bye, when she could have come out here and actually explained why she led. And then there's the language of where she's kind of shifting responsibility, and it feels like she's using a lot of community organizing buzzwords, and I don't like that stuff. Look here, look, just have a cat. Hey, there. Is this better? Is this better? Do we feel less contentious now? You're pushing my microphone. What are you doing? What are you doing? Ooh, yeah. What are you gonna say? What is he gonna say? Is he gonna say AOC good but makes mistakes sometimes? Is that what he's gonna say? What are you gonna say? What are you gonna say? Ah! Oh yeah, I forgot. He's a fascist. He doesn't like AOC. Oh. Nah. Ooh. End the segment. This is as good as we're gonna get.